Welcome to this week's edition of New York Now. I'm Chantel Destra. It was a long road to get the Rape is Rape Act over the legislative finish line. But things changed this week when Governor Kathy Hochul signed the legislation that updates the state's definition of rape to include forced sexual contact that is not penetration.
We're reassuring survivors that when they walk into a police station or approach the witness stand, the full weight of the law of the state of New York is behind them. It's behind them now going forward.
Prior to the law, New York defined rape solely as forced vaginal intercourse. Now the state will recognize other forms of forced intercourse, including oral and anal forced contact, as rape. After working to get the bill passed for years, the bill's sponsors, State Senator Brad Hoylman-Segal and Assemblymember Catalina Cruz, celebrated the signing alongside the governor.
Forced sexual contact against your will, whether it involves vagina, anus, or mouth, is an absolute violation of self and your trust, and calling it anything other than rape negates what we as survivors have endured. This insufficient and discriminatory narrative also leaves out victims of male on male, female on female attacks, often resulting in failure to prosecute the rapes committed upon members of our LGBT community. But today, Rape is Rape becomes law, and it is more than just a simple change in words. It's a systematic shift on how we think about who is a rape victim and who is a rapist.
While the law was first introduced in 2011 and for years passed in the Assembly, it struggled in the state Senate, which Senator Hoylman-Segal underscored in his remarks.
At times, it seemed like the Senate wouldn't take yes for an answer, but we got there today.
And the senator went on to explain how the expanded definition of rape in the state will empower male victims and members of the LGBTQ+ community to come forward and report forced sexual contact. Here to discuss the newly passed Rape is Rape law, we're joined in studio by Maysoon Khan of the Associated Press and Ashley Hupful of the Daily Gazette. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Now, we know this law originated with the story of Lydia Cuomo, who in 2011, she was brutally attacked by an off-duty police officer. The jury did not find her attacker guilty of rape, but they did find him guilty of sexual assault. And since then, Lydia has been very adamant that Albany needed to update the state's law and expand the definition of rape. So it's been 12 years since that all took place. So why did it take so long for this to come to fruition?
Well, I think part of the reason is that we did have a Republican-controlled Senate up until, I believe, a few years ago, and there was really not much appetite for the bill to pass. The Assembly did pass it each year, but it didn't really go any further. And I think with having the first female governor, really, and she's talked a lot about that being, challenges around that she's brought women's issues into the forefront, that I think that really got it over the hill.
Yeah, and as you said, it passed time and time again in the Assembly, but there was some hurdles in the state Senate. So what were some of those hurdles that prevented it from getting it over the finish line?
I think there's been a serious cultural shift in the way we view rape, and so I think that was definitely a component in just more politicians having political will to get this over the finish line compared to before. I think one of the lawmakers said there was kind of an archaic view on how we view this subject or talk about this subject. So I think that definitely has been a huge component in getting it over the finish line. But I would like to reiterate, having a first female governor, I think that definitely helps, especially with past Republican leadership. So I think things are a little different now compared to the past.
Definitely. And in the governor's remarks, she brought up E. Jean Carroll's case, which the writer accused the former President Donald Trump of rape. The former president was not convicted of rape. And the judge in that specific case cited the state's narrow and technical definition of rape as one of the reasons why the jury did not move forward with the rape charge. So, it seems like this is something that definitely prosecutors were aware of right? That the state had a very narrow view of rape and it was just a matter of time. So from a legality standpoint, how will this help survivors and prosecutors move forward with rape charges?
Well, as you said, it broadens the definition. Previously, the definition of rape was vaginal penetration. And now it's now broader to anal and oral penetration. And it opens the door for us to discuss rape when it comes to LGBTQ community and really a lot of, I mean, as you said, so in the case of Lydia Cuomo, they couldn't prove that there was vaginal penetration, so he was convicted of sexual assault. And I think we're really talking about more the idea that it doesn't have to be just a like you said, it's a very narrow definition. Yeah. And it really opens the door for a lot more claims and things like that.
And
oh, no, also it just kind of ensures inclusivity, as you said, and it includes all forms of non-consensual sex. It doesn't have to be vaginal penetration by a penis. And so that's kind of another aspect. It might be easier. I think Hochul said this early in the week. It'll be easier for victims to hold perpetrators accountable in the court of law because of this expanded legal definition. So,
and what was interesting to me was that New York definitely isn't a leader in this, right? In fact, there are several states who have already expanded the definition of rape to include these other forms of forced sexual contact. So what does this say about the state that New York took so long to kind of bring this over the finish line?
I know, I mean, I talked to a few people about this, and I was very surprised that they did not know this.
Right.
They were surprised that it's just, it was, the legal definition. And I think, again, some of the aspects that we talked about previously, the first female governor and really bringing these issues up into the forefront, it just hadn't been talked about, I think, much, or people didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you said, people didn't know, and now this is a huge change, this expansion of the definition. So what can lawmakers and prosecutors do to ensure that people are aware of this big change?
I definitely think there needs to be a public awareness campaign. I know a lot of lawmakers, I know the governor's office really carried this bill. They had their whole press conference earlier in the week. So I think they might have public awareness campaigns. That's just a guess, just to educate the public. I know, as you said, prosecutors, DAs, everyone's kind of aware that there needed to be a change. Even the judge in the Trump case acknowledged it. And so I think that, I think maybe as time goes, we'll see how that unfolds.
I think the Trump trial also has done a lot of public awareness within itself. Absolutely. I mean, the whole nation was watching. And I think maybe not just, I think the way we talk about rape and it being more of a public issue just within itself. I mean, the issue of rape alone, I think will help the conversation.
Right. And going back to the ways in which that this bill or this law will help the LGBTQ plus community, in his remarks, Senator Brad Hoylman-Segal, of course, underscored this point. And he just cited the studies of how many transgender people are, experiencing rape and are fearful to come forward because of the challenges. So what are some other ways that we can continue to help this community report rape and sexual misconduct?
Well, I think Senator Brad Hoylman, he kind of spoke about how the previous definition, the old definition, was super heteronormative. And so I definitely think, as you mentioned, a public awareness campaign is necessary just to acknowledge that there are various forms of non-consensual sex that, may result in, things like that. So I definitely think just public awareness and then even just the simple change, I think a lot of people who are victims finally will have a means to come forward, with their case if they choose to.
I think a major component is education. I mean, to talk to people, no means no. And really, the more you can, I guess education and to everyone. I mean, all across the board.
Yeah. And I wanted to get both of your perspectives on the Red Room signing of the bill. I would say, a lot of the signings of bills are very performative. They are just very celebratory. But this one definitely felt very heavy. A lot of the remarks from the Senate sponsor and the Assembly member who sponsors the bill. It was very emotional, very filled with a lot of passion. Did you guys feel that as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I saw people, women crying. It seemed like this was just something that some people, Lydia Cuomo, have been working for so long that I can't imagine what that would be like.
Right.
And you also felt kind of a heaviness in the room. I think it was an emotional moment for a lot of people in just passing this as well. So,
yeah. And then before the bill was signed by the governor, the legislature did pass a revised version with chapter amendments. And usually we don't see that. We usually see the governor will pass a bill with chapter amendments with these specific changes. The bill can then move forward and become law. So what was the political strategy of the legislature doing that?
Hochul was asked about that, and I think there's probably some truth to the fact that to make that kind of shift in penal code is that there must have been a lot of work behind the scenes to do that across the board. And I'm sure there, like every bill, there was details, that went back and forth between the Assembly, Senate, and the governor's office. I don't think we don't know the conversations that went on, but I do think there's a lot of truth to the fact that they probably had to do a lot of overall change in the language around this issue.
And really quickly, because we are running out of time, where do we go from here? Now that the bill is finally into law, what are some ways that the lawmakers can continue to help survivors in the years to come?
I think whenever a law is passed, you kind of see it roll out effectively, and then that's when amendments come in. And so I definitely think that time will tell. I think the law takes effect September 1st, so we still have ways to go. But I'm sure, if any advocates raise up issues with certain parts, they might make changes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's always a rocky rollout to anything. And, I know there's a lot of conversation around, we've seen changes to the sex offender list. I think really it will, like she said, time will tell.
Right. Well, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here for now. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
And we were speaking with Maysoon Khan of the Associated Press and Ashley Hupful of the Daily Gazette.